welcome to this month's edition of The Breeze. We are excited today to be talking about some of the same things we talked about last month, just to finish off that discussion, and then talk about a very important topic. Now, last month we talked about, among various things, in terms of whether there's a place for etiquette in today's world, and whether incivility is rampant in this country from the highest level of government on down to the conversations we have here in Sun City. And this past couple weeks I've seen two national examples of what we were talking about. Incivility at the highest levels of government. If you saw the State of the Union speech, you know what I'm talking about. And secondly, let's talk about the Super Bowl. Who doesn't watch the Super Bowl, at least for the commercials and halftime? And Tina, you may disagree with this, and you may disagree, but I thought the halftime show was an affront, if you will, to civility and decorum. And what do you think?
Well, I have to ask, in what regard you mean an affront? Was it?
It was trashy.
Yeah, are you talking about the music? Are you talking about the outfits? I mean, be more specific.
I think that it was the flaunting of female sexuality as a goal and objective, and bringing on all those young girls at the end of the halftime show was just atrocious. Other than that, I liked it.
So what you're saying is you don't like the what do they call it, the twit or the tweeting or whatever?
Twerking?
Twerking, yeah. See, you know the term, so
Well, of
obviously.
course I do, because it's been jammed down my throat. But the point is that we have reached a point in our society where decorum and appropriate behavior is dismissed, and you are forced to accept what other people,
the new normal.
the new normal.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose.
I have to agree. I love music, I love dancing, I love entertainment, but I thought some of it was over the top.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can twerk and do all you need to do with more clothes on.
Yeah.
But again, I think a lot of it was about ratings and promotion.
Of course, and it was in Miami.
You know.
I get that there's a Latin vibe down there in Miami.
Well, the Latin vibe, that was a whole different conversation. There was a message behind that, and we can talk about that either now or at another time. But it was a message to the powers that be for that community. So I applaud them for making the message loud.
Well, I
It was
disagree
how
with
it
you,
was
but
how it
that's
was
okay.
delivered. That's okay. You're entitled.
Well, that evening, there were several neighbors that were having people come over and watch the game or halftime. So out of 7 people, 6 of them were, I'm not interested in the game, but I'll watch halftime. I was the only one that said, I'm not interested in the halftime, but I'll watch the game. I watched the halftime in my own living room by myself. I can't say I was surprised, but I was very, very disappointed. We had just come off this beautiful rendition of God Bless America. For all we know that stands for, and I guess I'm nostalgic enough to think that this is a country of values and the teachable moments. I thought it was wonderful, and then suddenly we go in, 2 quarters later, we come into a very, I thought, quite bizarre. Not surprised, though, and that's sadness in itself. I wasn't surprised, but I was disappointed.
Well, I think there's a bigger issue here, and we'll get off this specific topic, but there's a bigger issue here, and I think part of it you just alluded to is that there's a culture war going on, an absolute culture war, and that it's a battle for what values are important and are sustainable, and what needs to be modified maybe, and what we learn. Now, the word culture, one definition, I've been doing some reading, the sum total of ways of living built up by a group of human beings and transmitted from one generation to another. That's one definition of culture. And that embodies and encompasses art, music, drama, all of the interactions between human beings as a whole. And I think we're in a battle for whether we're going to have a culture that we believe in and that we can pass on proudly, or whether we are going to dumb down and accept the new normal.
Well, you had an option if you didn't like the halftime, as an example, to turn it off. If you don't like what you're seeing, you have control of what you prefer to participate in.
Certainly an individual act, but in terms of the culture of America, and what does that say about us? I want to get off Super Bowl
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah.
But I mean, we all have incidents where we run into behavior or other displays, if you will, that either offend us or not. And how do we get back to transmitting values to the next generation?
I think we have to speak them. You know, I was thinking about the families that were sitting watching this and thinking, I hope there are a whole lot of parents, especially dads, that turn to their 13-year-old son and say, son, this is not what we want to watch, or this is not what I want you to choose to watch. I mean, it could be a strong, teachable moment, but if the older brother or father is sitting there and taking great pleasure in it, then it makes it okay. So it's like, who do we model to really get that balance of what's sensible anymore?
Who were your role models?
My role model would have been my grandmother.
Okay.
You know, but I also know that when the Beatles came, there was a, oh my God, look at their hair. You know, I mean,
It's always something. Yeah.
It reminds me of an illustration that if you have a boiling pot of water on the stove and you put a frog in it, that frog will bounce right out of there.
Right.
If the pot is simmering, that frog will stay in the water and it will die. And that's kind of how society can work. We get so accustomed to what's around us, we eventually become part of it. And we might know the difference, but we're content because it's.
That's pretty damn profound. I like that.
But who's to say that what our normal was correct, if you will? In other words, we're a melting pot of cultures and things, and as we grow, as time changes, as technology changes, it demands a new normal. It's up to us to determine for ourselves, because we can't really dictate to the next generation. I think we can actually show them how we would like to live by example, but we really can't demand that new normal is our new normal.
Have you ever run across a situation where you thought you had a teaching moment with your kids or relatives or anybody really, and you tried to make a point and you said, that's just going over their head, or they're not listening?
Yeah, kind of the
You had a good saying about that a minute ago, which is about closed eyes.
Yeah, and it's every shut eye ain't sleep.
Every shut eye ain't sleeping. And then, you know, years later, one of your kids will say, remember, Dad, what you said when I X, Y, and Z? I've always remembered that. I mean, that happened to me recently. I said, I don't remember that. But I guess it was a good thing because they remembered it. Or,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I mean, is there anything from, I know there is, from your youth that you heard from a parent, a mentor, a teacher that has stuck with you all these years and maybe governed some really important decision making?
Yeah, I remember a plaque that was in a bedroom at my grandmother's house, and I spent a lot of time over there. And it was a picture of a fish with a hook in its mouth. And the caption was, even a fish wouldn't get caught if he kept his mouth shut.
Radio.
I like
And I
that.
pondered that as an 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old girl, and I can still see that. Now, how it shaped me, I'm not quite sure. But the other one is, your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear a word you're saying.
That's interesting.
So that was profound for me too, because otherwise you've got you're a contradiction, you know?
Right, right. Well, you know, I don't remember a lot of my mother's sayings, but my wife has quite a few that she shared with me. And the main one was, of course, when in doubt, don't.
Keep your mouth shut.
Well, keep your mouth shut or don't go there.
Or don't do it, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it is your choice to be in the wrong place at the wrong time or not.
Yeah. Well, and usually you have a little thing that kind of, your inner voice says, you know.
Intuition,
And so
intuition, yeah.
if that's that little doubt coming in, that's the signal.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we actually went out on the streets here in Sun City and talked to some residents, and we asked them if there was one phrase or adage or critical statement they got from a mentor, a parent, a teacher, and what it meant to them and whether that really affected their decision making. And let's take a look at some of those answers.
The one adage or saying that we always had in our house growing up is, your father works for the electric corporation, he does not own it. Turn off the lights.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, probably was 4 years old, and my grandfather spoke in Norwegian. I grew up in Wisconsin, and one of the first phrases my grandfather taught me in Norwegian was "Takk skal du ha," which means "thanks shall you have" in Norwegian. But that's how they express their thanks, in Norwegian. And I learned that when I was a young kid, probably 5 years old.
My dad had many practical sayings, and one of them that really stuck with me was, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I carried that in my heart and in my hands and in my head. And when I came to be an elementary teacher, I carried that out in the classroom. And I would put that all over the place, just as a reminder to the kids. It's there's such a difference when you put, a lot of yourself into your work. It will, in the end, have lots of positive results.
My mother was had a lot of Irish superstitions and stuff like that, and she always said that if a knife fell on the floor, that the next person in the house would be a cutthroat. If a spoon or a fork fell on the floor, that just meant we were going to have company. But the one thing that I said, I was telling the other lady that I thought my mother made up, but she said she's heard it too, was that if you sing before your breakfast, you'll cry before your dinner. And she usually hit us for singing, but now I sing with the rapparees, so it didn't work.
So the saying that has impacted my life in many, many respects is never quit, never give up. Throughout my career, both in personal and professional life, we all have stumbles. We all have things that happen, and that's just life. But perseverance is the key to success. And I was taught by my dad early on, never give up, never quit. Find a way around the issue and persevere. And so that's led me to where I am today, which I'm still here, so I guess it worked.
Okay, girls, so what else can we say about the responsibility of winning the culture war, assuming we want to win it? Does it come from Washington, D.C. or not?
Well, nothing comes from Washington, D.C. that dictates what I do. But
Okay.
I recognize and pay attention to what's going on around me. And if I don't like it, I choose to do otherwise. Importantly,
When you make, excuse me, but I'm rude here, but when you make that choice, what do you resort to make that choice?
my actions, what I do on a day-to-day basis, and how I treat people and how I
And
interact,
where does that come from?
comes from my upbringing.
Aha.
Yes, comes from my upbringing. That I'm resolute and I have a foundation, and I can choose to ignore that, or I can choose to really add to it and be a better person, and that's what I try to do. I mean, one of the sayings my mother used to say when she thought I got out of pocket was, "I brought you into this world and I'll take you out." And it was kind of like, yeah, even at this day at my young age, you know, she's inclined to say stuff like that to me, and I just kind of chuckle.
You know what I think, though, is that with a foundation of values that's instilled by someone, and then you get to a point in a cultural attack like we're under, where you say maybe that foundation doesn't matter anymore. It's easier to just go with the flow and be down, you know, lying down with dogs, coming up with fleas.
No.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
But I've always had my own mind. I'm a controlled person, and which is why there's certain things going up in college that I was exposed to. I determined that I was not going to be a part of that behavior. and that has kept me out of trouble many times.
And many times that's, I agree with you, it's based on the foundation you received, that your inculcation of values and behaviors that you could take through life and be successful and happy. And Margie, I know
Yeah.
you got something to add to all this.
The researcher.
Well, no, you did more research than I did. But I keep thinking too of the autograph book entry from when I was 12. That said, good, better, best. Never let it rest until the good is better and the better best.
Right, right.
So as,
Say
as
that 10 times.
a 12-year-old who was probably just at the point of making some decisions about where they're going to go and who are they and that whole adolescent stuff, that had a strong message for me. And I can't say it's been my guiding light through the years, but I revert back to it pretty often. And it's really kind of become part of what I would hope to do.
Okay. Well, here's another one that I came up with. If you go looking for trouble, you are guaranteed to find it.
Yeah.
So you need to make choices about your behaviors, not reactionary, proactively.
Well, I have another one. Don't take no wooden nickels.
Don't take no.
That's right. And you know, if you subscribe to whatever that person's doing, that's like your wooden nickel, and you're not going to be able to use it, right? And you know, few people take wooden nickels, but for the most part, you need to be smart about what you decide to be involved in.
Well, that's absolutely true. What you decide to
Yeah.
be involved in is a lot more difficult for today's youth, the teenagers of the world,
Yeah.
than it was in my time. I mean, drugs were not an issue when I was growing up, for example. Video games were not an issue.
Right.
Rampant, mass killings were
Yeah.
not part of the national scene. So they have to deal with a lot more than we did.
Yeah, they do, because the life they're living now, they're in what appears to be the norm rather than the exception. see?
Exactly.
And so if you're going to insert the exception, you risk losing being part of something. or you're thought of as, oh, well, come on, that's, who you're listening to.
Yeah, that's
That was
old hat,
30
man.
years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think that because we're becoming more multicultural, that we need to ask the questions of why. Why is that important to that culture, and learn from it? It doesn't mean it's a negative, but we need to understand better, I think, and then make decisions intelligently as to how we want to embrace that or dismiss it.
In what regard, Tina? Like, in what part of what we've been talking about? would you
Well,
say is
because
cultural?
the melting of our society, more blacks are with other ethnicities and Latinos, and it's become more multicultural in that respect. And with that blending of blended families come different cultures.
Different cultures, different art, different music, different.
Yeah, I mean, so many,
Ways of
a
living.
quandary of things. And
But- Once again, I interrupt and be rude. I'm sorry.
you sure are today.
Do you believe that there is a universal set of values in any so-called culture or ethnicity that should be sustainable and really prevail?
Well, again, it goes back to the culture, because I can't say that every culture subscribes to the Ten Commandments, but if I were to use something as a learning tool, I would use that, because it talks about how we treat and how we, respect each other and so on and so forth, the Ten Commandments. But again, that's an assumption that I could be making erroneously, because if you are of a different ethnicity that I don't know about, then I think that's where the conversation needs to happen. Rather than assuming, let's talk about it. I noticed that there's certain things that you do on a Saturday rather than on a Sunday. Maybe as a Gullah person, they go to church on Sunday, maybe they get to church at 10 o'clock and don't get out to 2.
Right. But I think what I'm alluding to is, okay, we don't need to impose, if you will, our idea of values on a different ethnicity or culture or background. But do they have their own, I guess the simple way to say it, do they have their own version of a sort of a guidepost or guidelines, words to live by that are eternal, that don't depend on whether it's rap music or rhythm and blues or rock and roll or big band, because they are eternal and they never change, and they are the basis of human society?
Perhaps, but who's going to define them? What are those things that we're talking about? And I think that's why you have to have the conversation. If that's important to you as an individual, and you and I are different cultures, then ask the question. I noticed that blah, 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 blah. Why is that? You know?
Well, we're not from different cultures, Dan. We're from different planets, okay? Well, I don't know about all that, but
But we both like wine.
that's true. That's true. Any other little sayings? I know, Marjorie,
Well, I have.
you've written down
You
a
have
few.
another one too you want to share?
No,
Tina?
not right
Okay.
now. No.
Well, I think we all probably heard never leave the house without clean underwear because you might be in an accident.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, as though that would be a reflection on the parent, you know. I don't know. Pretty is as pretty does.
Yeah.
I never-
Handsome is as handsome does.
Oh, okay. Why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free?
Right. Heard that
Oh,
one.
we'll just leave that to your own interpretation, and hopefully it's not censored. Oh, and of course you can never eat an hour before going swimming, or you'll have severe cramps.
Yeah, that's right.
And of course the old, because I said so, that's why.
Yeah, and that is interesting in its own right. I think I can say that since I've been here in Sun City, my wife and I always say, you know, when you decide whether to do something for someone or not, or whether it's appreciated or not, or whether you are just doing something for your own benefit, she always says you can't go wrong doing the right thing.
Ah.
And that's not punny. I mean, my name is right, but that's not what I'm
Oh,
saying.
okay.
You cannot go wrong doing the right thing.
You
If
know, you're
someone
right.
is in need, whether they ask for it, whether they resent it when you try, if it's the right thing, I don't think you can go wrong.
I like that. And if you don't tell a lie, you'll never get caught in it.
That's right.
So it's kind of taking it real basic to listen, you know, do the right thing. Well, that was a whole Nike thing at one point, right? Very popular. Do the right thing.
Just do it.
Just do it. Oh well.
There's a slight difference there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do the Right Thing was
So much for Nike.
Spike Lee's movie.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, up in the Midwest, we'd hear if somebody left a door open. What, were you born in a barn?
Yeah.
Was that universal? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you let the heat out. Don't. You let the heat
Don't
out.
let the heat out
Or let the
dogs
air out. Yeah, the dog's
yeah,
out.
Or
Yeah.
put on a sweater. I'm cold.
Well, I think it's fair to say that if you are interested in a more polite, more civil society, if you are interested in avoidance or acceptance of unacceptable behavior, then you need to maybe hearken back to some of the things you learned
Yeah.
as a youth and have applied through your life. I can say that I have had lessons that I've applied in decision making based on childhood experiences or childhood mentorship to me. And I know you have as well.
Well, one thing I have to say in closing is that if we can positively impact someone by doing the right thing at that moment, then do it.
Yeah. We can't change a generation, we can't change a culture, but we can change one person, two people, maybe within the course of a week, a month.
Well, a change in culture doesn't occur unless it starts with the first step. Hey, pretty profound, right?
Oh,
and if that
let's
first
write that
step,
one down.
if that first step is taken by you or me, then we should do it. You never go wrong by doing the right thing at the right time.
I like it.
Okay, well, that's it. That's it for this month's edition of The Breeze. We hope you've enjoyed it. We hope it caused you to think a little bit about the culture war that we're in, appear to be in, and we hope you enjoyed it. And please join us again next month when we again shoot the breeze.